Joining me now, my co-host on MS Now's The Weekend Primetime and economics editor for The Bulwark, Catherine Rampell, staff writer at The New Yorker, Susan Glasser, MS Now justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, and senior writer at Slate, Mark Joseph Stern. Catherine, I will start with you. So, in that very interesting speech earlier this afternoon.
Good euphemism.
Yes, you know, I have to have a bunch of those in my back pocket all the time in this day and age. So the president clearly lashing out, angry he lost here. At the same time, doubling down and saying tariffs staying here. Where do things stand? If you're a small business owner, what's your next move?
That is an excellent question that businesses around the country are asking themselves right now, because they have been dealing with unbelievable chaos and uncertainty from this administration, basically from the get-go. Donald Trump put in place lots and lots of tariffs last year. Most of them were under the authority that the Supreme Court today said he cannot use, right? That they struck down. They said he does not have the constitutional power, nor any power delegated by Congress to use. However, he does have a lot of other tariff authorities in his back pocket. And this administration has been telegraphing for months at this point that he planned to use those. So he can reconstitute to some extent a lot of the tariffs that were struck down with an asterisk. The way that he would basically backfill those tariffs, first of all, takes a lot longer to put in place because he can't just use his itchy Twitter finger and decide he's mad at an ad from Canada that basically used the words of Ronald Reagan to be pro-trade, and therefore he's going to raise tariffs on them. Or he can't get rid of the tariffs if somebody comes bearing a gold bar, as was the case with the Swiss. He can't just do that. There have to be hearings. There have to be filings. There's basically notice and comment. There's a lot more bureaucracy that goes along with it. That's his first limitation. His second limitation is that there are some constraints on how those tariffs can apply. Some of the ones that he mentioned in that clip that you played, can only be in place for 150 days, for example. So he can't just slap them on willy-nilly, but he can still maintain that uncertainty for businesses around the country and consumers, for that matter.
So, Ken, what was your read of the president's remarks? Do you get the sense here that he is essentially defying the Supreme Court?
I don't think we're there yet, Antonia, because, as Catherine just said, he's finding ways around. He's going to try to maneuver around this decision with his existing authorities. But the language he used to criticize this decision is just not consistent with the American tradition. It's the language of autocracy, not of democracy. Look, presidents criticize Supreme Court decisions all the time. There was a lot of heated rhetoric about, for example, the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. But to call justices that he appointed to the court disgraces, to suggest that what they're doing is somehow un-American and that it's not on the level, that is not the kind of language that presidents have ever used. And it sort of describes a disrespect for the rule of law that's really consistent with what Donald Trump's been doing. I mean, this is a week where he hoisted a banner with his own face on the Justice Department, which is something we've never seen before in American history, and sent a horrible message to current and former officials that essentially Donald Trump has seized control of the once independent Justice Department. So we're only a year into the Trump administration here, and the rule of law has suffered some blows. As long as he's not defying the Supreme Court, it's not suffered the ultimate blow yet, but it's pretty precarious at this moment.
Mark, you wrote in a piece earlier today that we should not be entirely cynical about today's ruling. Can you break down why this Chief Justice Roberts rebuke is, quote, genuinely encouraging to you?
So, look, this was a decision that the business community wanted and lobbied for. This was a decision that corporate America demanded. The Chamber of Commerce filed a brief in this case urging the justices to strike down the tariffs. Those are voices that the conservative justices typically listen to. And there has been a through line in the cases where the Supreme Court stands up to Donald Trump. It's often where a corporate America says this goes too far. That was the case where Trump tried to fire Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve. The Supreme Court has not yet let him do that. Once again, the corporate community said, we would really like an independent Federal Reserve, and the Supreme Court listened. So to some degree, yes, this is the Supreme Court once again siding with corporate America. But I do think that there is some really admirable courage reflected in this opinion and in Chief Justice Roberts' opinion for the court. Donald Trump has been pressuring the justices, especially the conservative justices, for months to rule in his favor. There has been an arm-twisting campaign right out in public. And what we saw from from the chief was this almost serene indifference toward the political pressures that had been placed on the court. He approached this as a pure matter of law, simple matter of statutory construction. He did not seem at all cowed by the leader of the free world berating him and his colleagues to rule in their favor. And, we've spent the last 13 months watching the court give Trump win after win, allowing him to consolidate so much authority in the executive branch. I found it very heartening to see that 6 justices, including 3 conservatives, including the chief, were really willing to draw a line here and to say, no, you cannot go this far. The Constitution assigns this power to Congress. Congress has not given it away to the president. We are going to strike down these tariffs, and we are not going to let anybody prevent us from doing our duty to uphold the law, even if it has major political consequences and backlash, as it obviously has today.
Susan, do you read it the same way that Mark does right now? I'm curious because both of you have written and spoken so much about the way in which this court has facilitated Trump's agenda, given him unchecked power. So do you see some of the same glimmers of hope that Mark just spelled out there?
Well, look, I think a lot of attention is being paid. You quoted at the beginning of this segment the excerpt from Justice Gorsuch's concurring opinion, and that is really striking. Gorsuch has been not only a Trump appointee, but a real conservative justice on the court. And what I saw in that quote and in a few others was a clear declaration from a conservative justice that I'm actually trying to follow through on my principles here of limited government and the idea that we do not have a king in America. And to me, that was a message he seemed to be wanting to send beyond just the framework of this particular case. And by the way, I should point out that it's actually kind of a clear-cut case. The reason Donald Trump did not impose tariffs in his first term in office using this particular statute is because his own lawyers and supporters told him that it was almost certainly would be struck down because it wasn't legal. And it's Donald Trump 2.0 who doesn't listen to people, who doesn't have the same kind of people on the inside advising him, who proceeded with it quite recklessly anyways, especially because of the chaos and disruption it will now cause. And I guess another point that I would make is, what is Justice Gorsuch saying? What is Justice Roberts saying? They're saying, hey, we still have checks and balances in the country. The legal system is one, but the other check and balance here is Congress. And if Donald Trump wants to be able to wave his Donald Trump magic wand and impose tariffs on the world, then the people who could do that are Congress. They could pass a law giving him that power, but they have not passed a law giving him that power. There's no indication that there are the votes in either the House or the Senate, despite the fact that they are controlled by Republicans who are giving him that power. And in Donald Trump's ranting and raving, which can, it wasn't just off the cuff frothing at the mouth, right? He was reading from a piece of paper there, which was pretty amazing. But in his response, he didn't say a word about Congress. He didn't say that he was going to listen to the court and try to get his tariffs passed legally. He suggested that he's just going to play another game with the courts and dare them to stop him.
Catherine, in any realm, is there a way in which this is almost ironically helpful and a good thing for the president? He obviously doesn't feel that way today.
Oh, yeah.
But in a way, he can kind of get off the ledge now if he wanted to with his whole affordability messaging plan. No?
I've been saying this for months. He should just take the win. Look, this is a huge gift to Donald Trump, to Congress. As Susan points out, Congress would be the ones to potentially rescue Donald Trump's tariffs, and they've been put in a difficult position because they don't really want to break with Trump, but they know that the tariffs are bad. Donald Trump apparently doesn't realize that the tariffs are bad. Take the win, right? The Supreme Court basically just gave corporate America and really the country writ large a huge shot in the arm, because we have like $175 billion that have been collected in these tariffs that, depending on how things shake out, should be due back to companies, should be going back to those companies that they can then use to invest, to hire, to bring in more goods, potentially to hold off on price increases. All of that would be very stimulative to the economy. So if Trump were smart, he would, maybe rant and rave about what the Supreme Court is doing, but really just accept the fact that they've helped him out. And yet I think this president is much more keen on snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.